Let's game out TikTok here for a second. Mick, real quick, what do you think happens?
It's going to be a really interesting test because it's one of those things that doesn't fall neatly into party politics. There are some Republicans who really, really want this ban. You had Mark Wayne Mullen on this show just 2 days ago talking about it. You saw Tom Cotton on the floor of the Senate, I believe, yesterday, stopping an effort to try and extend the decision. So there's a lot of Republicans who want to see it go into place. There's Republicans, of course, who are going to back Donald Trump. It will be one of the first tests of the new administration.
Yeah, one of the first tests. Sean, you were there.
I was going to say, I agree with Mick, but for different reasons, right?
Okay.
So I think there's a national, I mean, Mick is looking at it from a political aspect, and I think he's absolutely right. I think, but the other issue is that you got to look at this as a national security issue versus a free speech issue. Donald Trump is probably looking at it more, as Mick described, as a political tool. I think this is squarely a national security issue. If you were outraged by the Chinese spy balloon going over our country for days and not outraged by TikTok using or China using TikTok as an app of espionage, gathering data, then you've got your priorities. Like, this is a national security issue only.
Aren't you highlighting some of the confliction, right? Because Donald Trump was on one side of the TikTok issue, then he was on the other.
And
his team, Marco Rubio, Michael Waltz, John Ratcliffe.
I get it, and I know that he used it effectively during the campaign. There's no question about it. But once you become president, it is a national security issue. This is unbelievable. There should not be a discussion. If a blimp was floating up there sending out messages, would you be calling it a free speech issue, Rand Paul? I don't think so. This is not a free speech issue. China is not sending the same messages on TikTok.
Agrees with you, by the way.
I know they do, 9-0. We're all very smart people. I think look, the bottom line is China's not even showing the messages that they show our kids in China. This isn't about speech. This is about manipulation. This is about espionage. And I don't think that we should be, the idea that we're having a discussion about this is nuts.
I want to get to Mick here in a second from your perspective, but Sean, day one, you were there day one. And there's talks of 100 executive orders maybe. TheHill reporting this could involve tariffs, the border, the EV mandate, banning transgender athletes in women's sports, DEI.
There'll be more DEI. There'll be more energy as well. I mean, you touched on energy.
Yeah, I just hit on some of it. What are you hearing that this could possibly entail?
Oh, I think that and more. And there'll be, I mean, my guess is that you're talking about north of 100. The question that
north of 100.
North of, oh,
and how?
And that's the key. You're about to ask the next question. Is it first day, and what do you count as the first day? Remember, the president's sworn in, and to your point, he has the actual swearing in, then there's a lunch afterwards, then he goes to the parade, then there's a reviewing stand. By the time the president gets in, you don't have a ton of time before you're heading off to, he's got 3 balls that he has to appear at. And so the question is, how much time do you have to not just sign them, because it's not just a signature, right? You've got to explain them. They've got to sell them. And that's sort of been my counsel to these guys. Make sure that you're ready on day one to explain what was signed so that other people don't interpret it for you. So is day one Tuesday, the first full day in office, or is day one? But my guess is that by the time we wake up Wednesday morning, there's over 100 executive orders and actions signed by this president.
Mulvaney, what are you hearing?
Just about the same thing. That it's this. The words that I've heard used are shock and awe. All of the things they talked about during the campaign, there's going to be an EO on it. Keep in mind, and Sean will back me up on this, that during the first administration, we didn't really, hit the ground running. There was a lot of folks who were new to being in the executive branch. I was, Sean was. And it took us a while to sort of get our feet underneath us. That's not the case now. They've been working on this. Stephen Miller's been writing these executive orders for the last 18 months. So there's going to be an onslaught of these things. Now, some of them may be phased in. They may sign a piece of paper tomorrow or Tuesday to Sean's point and say, look, effective July 1, thus and such will happen, to buy him some time. But I think you're going to see more than you expect on Monday or Tuesday.
You know what strikes me is, Mick, you're the former chief of staff. Sean, you're the former White House press secretary. That White House, we always had an idea, a sense of details of what was coming. There was info flowing all over the place. But here we are, Donald Trump's going to be president in less than 72 hours. And I just asked a former chief of staff and a press secretary, and we still don't really have details. That's remarkable,
this goes back. It is, but this shows you the difference. I mean, Mick alluded to this. The bottom line is, this is a very different White House. We were getting to know each other. Some of us knew each other, but as a team, we had never worked together. There's a lot of new people brought in. Donald Trump was new. The process was new. The people, the process, and the policies are going to be vastly different in how they're approached this time. They've had time to think about it, what people they want, the process they need to get things done, and the policies they want to implement. Those three things are vastly different how they're approaching them this time than they did last time. And the discipline at the top, led by Susie Wiles, who's the chief of staff, is going to be very different. Whether it was Mick as chief of staff or Reince as chief of staff, you had these multiple power centers at all different times that don't exist this time. That's so much different. There's not a sense of who's running the show, who's trying to knife so-and-so in the back. Much, much different and more disciplined.
Mick, am I on to something there?
You are, but bring it back to the point you just raised. It's a much better oiled machine.
Thank you for watching, and make sure you go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.